Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the spookiest gaming experience ever. My name is Ghostly Gabe.
And I'm Jeff the Ripper.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, Jeff the Ripper.
Uh-huh.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing pretty good as well. This episode will be coming out on Halloween.
Ooh, spooky.
And Halloween is one of my favorite holidays.
Yes.
It's not my number one favorite. It might be tied with like Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Uh-huh.
But it's a good holiday. I love October. October is my favorite month of the year. I will say that.
It's a good month, definitely.
I got married in October.
Mm-hmm.
I love Halloween.
Yep.
I love fall. I love everything pumpkins. I love scary things.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Their house is decorated for Halloween, at least in some way.
Yes.
Pretty much all year.
Pretty much, yeah. We some of our Halloween decorations are all year decorations.
Yes.
Just because we love Halloween. So today's episode is going to be, there have been some episodes where we just cover one topic. This episode especially is going to be the spooky episode.
Ooh.
So we'll be getting to the questions in a little bit. But anyway, I'm just letting all our listeners know what to expect from this episode. This is going to be, I hope, a very, very good episode, a very spooky episode. But I'll try to pepper in some spooky sound effects here and there.
Yeah, so maybe like turn the lights down, light some candles.
Yes.
Play some spooky music.
Maybe whip out the Ouija board.
Ooh.
Except it's actually pronounced Ouija board.
Ouija.
Yes. Everybody always says Ouija. I don't know why.
I don't know.
And actually, Ouija is a copyrighted term. It's owned by Parker Brothers.
Right, that's true. Yeah, like the Ouija movie was like owned by Parker Brothers.
Yeah. So like in a lot of fiction, in a lot of media, you'll see it referred to as a talking board.
Right. Yeah, or like like some sort of like
a spirit board,
or something like that. Yeah.
So today, actually, I ran a short D&D session at the local library. We only had 3 people, not like the last time where we had like 11 or something.
Right, yeah.
But I had the players go through a haunted house. Ooh. It was a lot of fun.
You said there was some new people there.
Yes, one of them, his name's Justin, not Justin from Crit Academy, but this other guy, Justin.
Uh-huh.
He's been to all of them so far. And then these two kids that just kind of showed up. Yeah. My wife Lisa, the librarian, kind of roped one of them in. He got his friend to come in,
nice.
And they had never even heard of D&D before. So,
oh wow!
And one of them said he's going to be coming next time.
Nice.
So,
all right, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I love haunted houses. I love horror movies. I love everything about horror. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can have a good episode here talking about all that kind of stuff.
And I'm a big scaredy cat, so it'll be a good little dynamic there, I guess.
I wish that there was some way that while we were recording, I could like have like a skeleton hand come up on your shoulder.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute, Jeff. What's that on your shoulder?
It's
that's your hoodie. Sorry.
That's something. It's fine. Yeah.
All right. So Jeff.
Yes.
I want you to imagine that you're an adventurer.
Uh-huh.
You've been going through this evil dungeon. You've been killing monsters left and right, but you finally made it to this giant pile of treasure. And sitting atop that giant pile of treasure is a pile of bones. Oh. You see a giant dragon skull. You see some wings that once had flesh and muscle on them, but now they are just bones. And you think to yourself, well, good thing that dragon is dead.
Yeah.
Because now I can take all this treasure.
Sweet.
So you walk up, you go and you pick up a big handful of gold coins and you raise them up and you look at them smiling. And then you realize the skeleton's head has lifted up.
Oh.
And in its eye sockets are 2 glowing balls of fire. And it moves closer to you. And you realize that this isn't just a dragon's horde. This is a Dracolich's horde.
No!
So, for the Dracolich's horde today, we have a magic item called the Jack-o'-lantern.
Oh.
I found this online. It's at adventureaweek.com. I think that I'm not familiar with this website, but I put in some search terms in Google and this came up. So
sits atop a spooky porch step.
Yes. So this is a magic item. I think the rule set was Pathfinder that is made for, but
okay.
Close enough to 5th edition, or whatever you're playing. So this item is a jack-o'-lantern.
Pathfinder, the spookiest of tabletop games.
Sure. This pumpkin has a frightening visage carved into the front of it, and a light from inside casts flickering shadows across the walls. Ooh. When lit, a jack-o'-lantern projects shadows on the floor, walls, and ceilings within 30 feet, all taking on the shape of the carving on the pumpkin. There may be as many as 2d4 plus 1 of these shadows projected. The projected shadows require a perception check to spot. In this, the DC is 18. Adjust that to whatever edition you're playing. Each of these shadows can make a melee touch attack versus a single target with a +4 attack bonus, dealing 1 strength damage on a successful hit, no save.
Ooh.
And causing the target to be frightened for 1d4 rounds or shaken for 1 round if it succeeds on a DC 15 will save. The shadow disappears after the attack, successful or not. The shadows can be destroyed by exposure to sunlight or the equivalent. When they have all attacked or been destroyed, the jack-o'-lantern's light winks out. The pumpkin itself can be physically destroyed, has an AC of 5 and 2 hit points, but if it is physically destroyed, the light immediately goes out and a single shadow, that is the monster shadow, streams out of the pumpkin, attacking the jack-o'-lantern's destroyer. There is a 5% chance that the shadow is a greater shadow.
Oh.
Once lit, the pumpkins are active for 8 hours, and then they no longer function. They do not function in daylight.
Ooh.
So I kind of like this take on a jack-o'-lantern. It's not that it creates light, although it does. It's more that it creates shadows.
Yeah.
So those shadows, similar to the undead monster shadow, come to life and attack players, and similar to what shadows did in earlier editions, drain strength, which sucks.
Yeah.
Draining strength was awful.
Is draining strength a thing that can happen in 5th edition?
I don't think so. There might be some mechanics that are kind of similar to it.
It could be just like you take disadvantage on strength checks and attacks and stuff like that for a time.
Maybe. Or when we were in Justin's game, I think he had certain things drain away.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not healing surges, but hit dice.
Die. Yeah.
So you could have it maybe do something like that. I would actually have to look at how shadows work in 5th edition, because I'm pretty sure they are different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it creates shadows, and then those shadows are what attacks you. And you could just destroy the jack-o'-lantern so it doesn't create any more shadows, but if you do, it creates a big shadow because there's no light source anymore. Mm-hmm. So I really liked this. I love jack-o'-lanterns. I love carving them, although I feel like every year we put it off and we put it off and put it off, and then before we know it, we're making Christmas jack-o'-lanterns. We have done that before.
Oh, goodness.
But I love the idea of it in D&D and how it could, how you could make it into something the players have to fear rather than just a neat decoration.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I like this. If anybody else has any horror-themed magic items they would love to send us, I would love to get them.
Yeah, any time of the year, Gabe's down for some horror stuff.
Yes, absolutely. If somebody wanted to submit horror-themed magic items, or regular magic items, I suppose, how would they get those to us, Jeff?
They can send us an email at InterPartyConflict@gmail.com.
Yes, they could send us magic items, they could send us questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre. Mm-hmm. Anything you guys want to send, we would love it. But for now, I'm in the mood for some horror. Ooh. So, do you want to get into the question for today?
Yes. All right. Our spooky question for today comes from Nicholas P.
Hello, Nick. Come back to the grave.
Oh. Okay.
I'm sorry, everybody.
It's okay. This comes to us on email where the E stands for eerie. Okay. All right.
We won't be stopping that anytime soon. So everybody knows.
Just strap in. All right. Well, Nick asks, what do you think about a horror-themed campaign, and do you have any tips for running one?
Yes. And he actually sent this question quite a while ago. So
sure.
We've had this question in the bank for a few months, but I thought, we're still going to be around in October, and I would love to, have an episode all about running a horror-themed campaign.
Yeah.
So what better time than the episode that comes out on Halloween?
Yep, exactly.
Yes. So I love the idea of a horror-themed campaign. I have played in, I want to say, like 2 sessions of D&D or some variant of D&D that was explicitly supposed to be like a horror themed session. And I had a good time doing it. However, I do want to say before we really get too far into this that I don't think that Dungeons and Dragons is the perfect system for horror.
Sure.
I think for some reasons we'll get to in a little while, I think that it doesn't really lend itself to being scary. I think that because of what makes something scary, D&D kind of goes contrary to a bit of that. But we'll get into that as we go. But my point is that there are some role-playing games that are like explicitly horror themed or that are explicitly for running a scary game. One that I have heard of is Dread. From what I understand about Dread, it has some mechanic that like periodically through the game, you have to play Jenga in order to see if you succeed at something. And so the point is that like if you have to have like a steady hand, and if you are like nervous, it's going to make things fail. And so the players being nervous can make the game go worse.
Okay, yeah.
So like Dread is one full disclosure, I have not played any of these games that I'm about to mention. So I do apologize, but they are out there. Anybody who wants to read up on them is free to find out whatever you can.
Yep.
So Dread is one. There's also like Call of Cthulhu, which is, I believe, some sort of a role-playing game that is Lovecraftian, and as such, that it does lend itself to a lot of horror. In addition to those, there's you've said something about like Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, which I don't know if it's necessarily like horror. Right? It's I mean, it's vampires, so it's themed, and there's some horror elements to it, but not necessarily like I don't know for sure. Like I believe Steve played it a couple times back in the day, but like I don't think if it like is inherently supposed to be spooky in any way. It's just there are some more like horror themed things going on.
Sure.
Like, with their character, and the mechanics and everything.
Yeah. So like I've never played that. I actually do own one of the Vampire the Masquerade books, one or two, because I found we were at a Goodwill down in Tennessee, and like one day there were just a ton of role-playing books.
Nice.
And well, that particular time, my friend Will actually bought all of them up. So every time since then, I had been looking for more role-playing books, more like old D&D books, and I found one or two of the Vampire the Masquerade books. So I was like, what the heck? It's $1. I'll get a couple of these. So yeah, I'm not too familiar with that. Some other ones that I've seen listed there's a game called Don't Rest Your Head, East Texas University, Occult spelled with a K. I haven't played any of these. I do apologize, but like these are just some names that I have heard that people can be free to look up. Another one is if you are going to be playing D&D, there is of course the Ravenloft campaign setting.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Again, I apologize. I have never played any Ravenloft game, but there is a 5th edition module that has come out within the last year or two, The Curse of Strahd, which is that, if I'm not mistaken, takes place in Ravenloft or has something to do with Ravenloft. And that is more geared towards being horror, although, again, we'll get to what makes something scary in a little while. And whether that's going to be scary or not is going to rely a lot on the players, on the DM, their investment into it. But there are a lot of options that are specifically designed to be scary. So if you try something like D&D and you notice that it's not really scary for whatever reason, maybe try branching out into some other non-D&D role-playing game. And there's plenty out there that you can, just go to Google and type in horror role-playing games, horror RPGs, whatever. So there are options out there. We'll try to give you just sort of like some broad examples of how to make a game scary regardless of what system you're using.
Sure.
So when you're trying to run a horror-themed game, I think probably the most important aspect of horror, like one of the things that makes something scary that would not otherwise be scary, is atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of video games that are scary, all sorts of movies that are scary, and it has so much to do with the atmosphere, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, the emotions that it makes you feel. That is what is going to make it scary.
Yeah, sounds alone can cause a person to be in a very anxious state.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you want to run a game that is going to be scary, I would say probably what you should do before anything else is communicate to your players, I want this to be scary.
Sure.
If the players show up just for a normal game of D&D, a normal game of whatever, and you've got all the lights turned down low and you've got candles going and there's like a soundtrack of screams or chainsaws in the background, the players, they might get the hint pretty quickly, but they're probably not going to be in the right mindset to help it along.
Sure.
They might, be doing a lot of things that go contrary to keeping the game scary.
Yeah, so there's going to be a bit of a bit of groundwork to be doing.
Yes.
You have to want to make sure that everybody's in the right mood. Like, maybe send emails reminder, bring your best scared face or something. I don't know, or like
sure,
or just little things like set it up like it's gonna be like a Halloween party or something.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like let them know what to expect, and it's good to put people in the right mood ahead of time, so that you don't have to deal with anything.
Yeah, like springing horror onto somebody, it can work in something like a movie, like something scary.
Sure, there's something to the element of surprise,
right?
Like even if it is like it's like, oh, we're gonna do a horror, get ready for it,
right? But that works best in a medium where the entire experience is provided by the computer or whatever. Like if the player has to be providing some of the horror, them not knowing that there's going to be horror isn't going to help,
right?
So yeah, if you communicate with your players that you want to do a horror themed game, if you're running a game on Halloween or around Halloween, it's probably going to be, pretty easy to convince your players to do this. But, I sort of mentioned like turning down lights and lighting candles. If there's something you can do to set the mood so that when the players show up, or even not necessarily when they show up, but when you start to play, if the atmosphere around them is spooky or is something that they would expect to be in a spooky situation, then that will help them get into the right attitude.
I don't know how much there is to this, but I've heard it a couple times that there is a type of sound that causes like people to get scared. Like it's a specific tone or something that like one of the reasons why people get freaked out in certain places, like in like haunted houses and stuff, are like places that are allegedly really haunted.
Yeah.
They're like it's something to do with like the I don't know, like maybe the ventilation of those older buildings or something made this particular tone of sound that puts people in unease.
Interesting.
And like there are just recordings of this sound that apparently if you play it and you like listen to it with good enough speakers or headphones or something, like it can put you in a sort of a weird uneasy feeling. And I don't know how much there is to it. I do remember once playing it on my phone, like, and it was like a tone that I couldn't quite hear. Like it's it's at a pitch or something that you can't quite make out. Yeah. And I remember like I was just like, all right, I'll admit it was in the bathroom. I was sitting in the bathroom on my phone, like you do.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff.
That's right. Gabe does not have a smart device and it is better than everybody. No, just kidding. But no, it's just like like in the morning I'm going to the bathroom, whatever. And it's like I looked it up on YouTube and like played it and like I couldn't hear anything, but like there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. So like could just be my mind playing tricks on me or something that.
But I need to look this up.
But I mean, like, if there is anything to that, that might not be a bad idea as long as you let everybody know ahead of time,
right?
Because that sense of dread, if it's more effective on some people than it is on others, you want to make sure they know about it so they're not getting actually freaked out or it might cause anxiety or something like that. So,
right. Yeah, of course you want to be aware of any sort of anxiety and such. You don't want to upset your players. You want to enrich the experience with a little scare.
Sure. So, but again, I don't know how much there is to that, but it's something to look into if you really want to get into it.
I'll try to look into that. If I can find anything, maybe I'll put in the show notes. Click if you dare.
Put warnings.
Yeah. Kind of similar. There's a podcast that I listened to a while ago. It's presented as like a radio broadcast or whatever, but it's all fiction, and it's called The Black Tapes. And I like it and I dislike it, but I will mention it for this. There is part of the story involves this one guy who supposedly found this sound that if you hear it a year later you die, kind of similar to like the movie The Ring.
Sure, yeah.
And that's called the Unsound. And there's a point in the podcast where they play it. And I can't remember exactly what the noise was, but they played this, it was just like I don't know. It was just like a humming. And it did sound a little bit unsettling. Maybe it was because I was listening to it while I was at work at like 2 a.m. and I was letting my mind get away from me. And I was really buying into the atmosphere.
Sure.
But it was a little spooky. So maybe they used something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you want to get your players into the right mindset. And it is very hard to do that if your players are going to be like goofing around, if they're going to be talking about out of game stuff. So you might want to lay down some ground rules at the beginning and say, once you light the candles and you turn down the lights, then all out of game talk has to stop.
Uh-huh.
Or you might even, if you don't necessarily want to do that, maybe you do want there to be good visibility and so on, then you might just say, okay, maybe you have like a specific prop. As an example, maybe you have like a prop of a skull. It doesn't have to be a skull. It could just be like this red glass. Every time I set it down on the table, everybody has to be serious. Like, you don't want to have it on the table all the time. Horror does not work if it is constantly horror.
Yeah.
There is a reason that there is like comedic relief in movies. There's a reason why there's rising action and there's falling action. If the whole game is supposed to be serious, that's not going to be inherently better than not. So if you can have times where once the players go into the haunted house, you set down that prop on the table, and that gives all the players the indication we have to be serious now. And then once they're done, once they, find the beating heart underneath the house and they stab it and the house collapses in on itself, then you take it off the table, and then they know, okay,
sure,
now I have that moment where I can debrief myself on all this.
Yeah. Another cool idea would be like have that signal be something in the game as well. Like it's not necessarily like with the skull, you could have there be like a floating skull in that somewhere in the dungeon that like shows up randomly, but like you don't necessarily say the skull shows up. You slowly take it from underneath the table and put it on the table. Maybe not whenever not everybody's paying attention, and have there be some consequence to talking or something, like, it's like if you're talking at the table like that's sort of like if you're discussing things between characters, or even if it's between players, it could be translated to like, okay, there's at least some discussion going on between the characters.
Yeah.
So they're making noise. And if the skull is around when you make noise, something bad happens. Like
yes.
Maybe it alerts a monster deep in the dungeon, or it casts a curse on whoever speaks around it or something.
What that makes me think of actually is kind of like in the Silent Hill games. Have you played any of the Silent Hill games?
Well, I've watched your fine presentation.
I did do a presentation. Someday I've been meaning to put those up somewhere for people to listen to online, because I put a lot of work into those. I'm sure people would enjoy listening.
Yeah, and you recorded.
I recorded most of them. I didn't record the D&D one or the Dragon Dice one.
Oh, sure.
But I could easily recreate those if I ever wanted to.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the Silent Hill games, I'll just say that the first one as an example, the main character is this guy who's just going to this vacation spot with his daughter. They get into a car accident. He wakes up and it's morning. His daughter's gone. He's in the town that he was heading to, but it's really, really foggy. And it's like, I think it's even snowing, although later games have changed the snow to be ash. But he then goes out looking for his daughter. You can't really see very far because there's this fog everywhere. And then there are times where you'll be indoors and it'll be really dark. But then there are points in the story where everything turns evil, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
Like, for example, he's looking for his daughter. He goes to the nearby school because he found a piece of paper that had the word school written in her handwriting. He goes to the school. It's all dark. He solves some puzzles, goes through the secret passageway under the school, comes out in the school, except all the floors are like rusted metal. Even when he's outside, it's not light and foggy. It is pitch black outside. The walls are all like covered in blood. Sometimes the walls will be like made of flesh that is like pulsating.
Yeah.
He'll go to locations that he went to before, but they are similarly like there might be a bathroom that is now replaced with like I don't know, a giant cage that has a dead monster inside it or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the game will go back and forth. Like he goes through this evil dungeon and then something happens and then like he wakes up and it's daytime again and it's not the evil dungeon. It's the good dungeon. It's, it's the normal dungeon. And so you could do something similar in a role-playing game where the players know at some point the world is going to become this evil dark version. And you could signify that to the players by, without saying a word, picking up that skull and setting it on the table.
Yeah.
And then all the players look at each other and realize, oh crap, it's changing right before our eyes.
Right.
And then once they beat the bad guy that's like causing it in that area, takes it off the table, and then all the players, they realize, okay, we're not in the evil dungeon anymore. So yeah, you could easily signify something like that with just a nonverbal setting something on the table.
Yeah.
And then that tells the players something is happening in game and that they have to do something out of game.
Or if you have some way to like remotely dim your lights or something like that.
I mean, some people do.
Right.
That could be really
you
cool.
Just like slowly like dim the lights, like trying to make it so no one notices until it's gotten a little bit. Is it darker in here? Oh gosh.
That's really cool. So that's like just getting the game started. You want to be able to set the environment so that the players know that they have to be in the right mindset. So unfortunately, this means you cannot really run, in my opinion, you probably can't run an effective horror campaign in a non-private setting. Some people play in like a library or a coffee shop. If you do that, all the power to you. That's fine. I've played in libraries. I've played in coffee shops before. But this type of game, you kind of have to have a private place where you can be in control of the environment.
Yeah. It's like even if it's a relatively quiet venue, like things can you could throw off the mood by like somebody opens a door or something like
exactly
that,
yeah. And I mean, like one interruption isn't going to ruin the game, but just whatever you can cut out, the better. And if
mom, we're doing a game. I don't know what she does up there.
She kills.
Oh no.
I don't know. I don't know where that
kills
came
it
from.
in the kitchen. I don't know.
Yes.
Sorry. Love you, Mom.
And so another thing that you can do is provide some sort of like audio ambiance. This could be spooky music. Now, I'm not talking about the Monster Mash. Don't get me wrong. I love the Monster Mash. I love Halloween, but it isn't a scary song. It's not meant to be a scary song.
Right.
The Transylvania Twist is not scary.
Right, yeah. Whatever happened to it?
I don't know. Was that Dracula here a second ago? So you might want to, I'm sure there's places online you can find like spooky soundtracks or whatever. As of this episode being released, it should be Halloween or very soon after.
Right.
If it's Halloween, wait about 2 days and then go to your local party supply store.
Yeah.
Or go to, I don't know, like a craft store or something. I guarantee you they will have CDs of Chainsaw or of Screams or of whatever.
Chainsaw.
If you can, and it'll probably be like $1 because number one, it's after Halloween, and number two, because it's physical media, and who the heck uses physical media?
Right, yeah.
So, I'm sure you can find something like that. I was fortunate enough to many years ago get my hands on a CD of Screams. It is a solid, like, I want to say 2 hours of Screams. I've listened to the whole thing in totality on multiple occasions. And it's great. I also, in more recent years, got another one that is a chainsaw. That's why I keep using those two as examples.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you want to have those all the time or even at high volume.
Sure.
But if in the background, every now and then, there is a scream or there is just this noise of a deadly weapon somewhere in the background, that can put your players on edge.
Yeah, like the sound of like dragging chains and footsteps.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah,
and
sound effects are really good.
If you are a podcaster like us, or you have access to a good microphone, you could probably create your own Foley. You could probably create your own sound effects, and that would be a lot of fun and make the game that much more personal.
Yeah, you could personalize it for the adventure you're in. If it's a particular monster or event that's going on, you can customize it to that.
Exactly. So yeah. Getting the players into the right mindset at the beginning of the game and then keeping them there is pretty important.
Yeah.
Now, as for keeping them there, the next thing I want to talk about is mechanics, like rules.
Yeah.
Aren't scary.
Sure.
The more that a player has to refer to the rules, has to look at their character sheet, the more dice they have to roll, is going to take away from the experience.
Yeah, because like looking at a rule book or a character sheet can take you out of the game. Like, you know, like when you're trying to like do the math or figure out what abilities do I have here. It's like when you're reading a list of abilities, it can sometimes take you out of the game.
Yeah. If you're getting chased by like a scary monster and then you're like, oh well, wait a minute, I've got like a 17 AC and I've got 92 hit points. Shoot, I can take this thing. I can at least take a couple hits from him. Let's stay and fight.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to take players out of the scary environment.
Sure.
So, if you can, I mean, I said earlier that D&D isn't really super conducive to horror, and this is the reason, because D&D is so rules based. Mm-hmm. That's why I think like a lot of other games that lend themselves to less rules based and more narration based would probably be better for horror.
Yeah.
Now, you can still make a good experience. You can still make a spooky game with D&D, but it is going to require more work on the players, more work on the DM. And if you can find a way to resolve something without involving the rules, that's going to help somewhat to get you on the right path.
Yeah.
If you're feeling super confident in your ability to run a game and to keep the players engaged, you might even want to try not rolling any dice at all. Maybe not for the whole session, but like have a portion where when the players try to do something, it either fails or it succeeds based on just what you as the DM think.
Sure.
If the less the players feel like they have control over their environment, the better. I mean, the better for horror, as long as the DM, of course, is fair and is including them in everything. But if you can get the players to get more into their characters and not really focus on the mechanics, the better.
Yeah, you could even play it out as like there's a curse or something that like makes you unable to, like, your characters don't feel like they don't feel the same. They feel like they can't quite hold small
rounded objects
with flattened sides and numbers on them. That's just like they just can't seem to hold them in their hands.
Right,
weird,
right. And going with what you were saying about like if the players talk at the table while the skull is on,
right,
then the like creepy skull that's following them around curses the player that did it.
Right.
If you can make it into a meta game curse,
right, yes,
that might help get your players, a little bit more in the mindset of like, okay, I need to be aware of what I'm doing. Like I need to not be actively thinking about the meta game.
Right.
Or, I mean, maybe it might make them think about it more. I don't know. I've never tried this, but
sure.
But yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah, it helps set the mood a little bit, and it helps go with the like making sure everybody knows, hey, we're doing this.
Yes.
It's like there's a curse on the table.
Sure. So if you're confident, try to go with less dice, possibly no dice, depending on which system you're running. That's going to be easier or harder. But like if there were a game that was entirely just an interactive story rather than rolling a bunch of dice, I think that you would have to be good at doing that. Like that being good at D&D doesn't necessarily mean that you'd be able to run something like that well.
Yeah.
But if you can pull it off, I think that would be a better starting point than a game like D&D where there's a ton of rules.
It can be tricky, and actually I just came up with something, a good tip for that. If you're going to run a campaign where you're using a lot less dice and less focus on the mechanics, don't do it right after a level up.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as a guy who likes his character, making his characters, and when his character gets abilities and stuff, he's excited to use it. If you're ever going to have a campaign that's mostly role playing, or something like this where you're not going to be rolling as much dice, or has some less mechanics based events, don't do it after a level up or right after somebody just got a cool item or something like that.
Right.
Because it's like everyone's going to be itching to use their new abilities or that sort of thing. So like maybe this is the adventure that gets them that level up or something like that. So it's a nice reward on top of all this, like, this new stuff that they did.
Right.
So yeah, that's just something I wanted to add to, like, non-dice and non-mechanics based adventures where, like, it's fun and rewarding, but there's like the character fiend in me is like, I want to use my cool ability. Like, I made this character so I could use a cool ability, and like there's all this talking going on, but at the same time, like it's always fun exploring a different side of my character.
Right.
So like what would this character do in a haunted mansion? Like what would go on?
Yeah, it's a good one. Another thing is that if you're going to be running something that is horror themed, you as the DM, especially, I mean the players too, but like the DM has to be 100% invested.
Sure.
Because like, let's say you want to do a spooky voice or something. You might want to go over the top. You might not want to. An over the top voice might pull people out of it. It might not.
Sure.
But regardless, if you try to do a scary voice, if you think that it's a silly voice, if you are not 100% invested in this silly voice, the players are going to hear it as a silly voice and they're not going to take it seriously.
Right. Yeah. That can pull you out of it.
Yeah. But if you make a silly voice, but you are 100% invested in that and like you do not back down on that silly voice, the players might think it's silly at first, but eventually they'll be like, he's still going. Like this is for real.
Yeah.
Justin from Crit Academy has, he does a lot of voices when he does his games. When we played, he did a couple voices that were like, when I first heard them, I was like, oh, this is goofy. He was doing this like kind of like a mad scientist, like with a twitch in his eye and whatever. At first it's goofy, but like he was 100% committed to it.
Sure. Yeah.
And eventually it's like, wow, this guy's unhinged.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I got more into it the more it went on.
Yeah. The more you learned about the character, the more it like fit with like, okay, yeah. This guy's a little crazy. Awesome.
Exactly. An idea of a character like the Joker in Batman. In like the Batman the Animated Series, it was Mark Hamill doing this really kind of goofy voice.
Sure. Yeah.
But he was committed to that voice.
Yeah.
At first glance, that voice might sound silly, but then you realize it sounds silly because he is a lunatic.
Yeah.
He sounds silly because he is insane, and the silly voice makes him even scarier. So as the DM, you have to be committed to whatever you are putting forth as scary, because if you hesitate, the players are not going to buy into it.
I love Mark Hamill's Joker.
Yes, it's very, very good.
There's other good Jokers out there.
Yes.
But there's some bad ones too.
The Joker is actually, there's something we'll get to in a little bit, but the Joker, his appearance is inherently kind of creepy. And we'll get to why in just a little bit. One more thing while I'm talking about just like getting the game started and then keeping it going. In a minute, we'll talk about what makes something scary.
Right.
But another thing that the DM should keep in mind is that you as the DM, you have an unlimited special effects budget.
Oh, sure.
I've actually, a lot of what I'm bringing forth in this episode, I got a lot of inspiration from. There's another podcast called the NPC Cast that they're kind of a similar format to ours. Like every episode, they cover like a specific topic. And anyway, they did an episode, I think sometime last year, about running a horror themed game. And this is one point that they brought forward. It's you have an unlimited special effects budget.
Yeah.
You aren't going to, the special effects budget is limited only by your imagination.
Right.
You can have
maybe your ability to describe things, but
definitely. So like you don't have to worry about, oh, that monster is too big, I can't describe it.
Right.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas a movie, it's like, well, you can't make a monster look good unless you're willing to put enough money into the effects.
Right, yeah.
In D&D, your imagination and the players' imaginations are going to be so much better of a CGI computer or CGI effects designer than an actual CGI effects designer could ever be. And not only that, there are things that you can do that you can describe that could not work on TV or in a movie.
Right.
Let me give you an example. Let's say you're walking through this haunted house, or you're walking through this house that people say is haunted. You walk down the hallway, there's 2 doors on the right side, 2 doors on the left side. You get to the end of the hall, you look around, you turn around, you go back. On the way back, there's 3 doors on one side and 2 doors on the other. But it's not just that. That door is painted a color you have never seen before. As a player, that's going to catch your interest. And you're going to be like, what in the world could this possibly look like? And it's already going to be giving you ideas in your head that could not exist on a screen. You can't put a color on a screen that somebody hasn't seen before because that's not how colors work.
Right, yeah.
But if you tell someone something that could not exist physically or could not exist like, in their field of vision, if you tell that to the player, their mind is going to start doing work to try and make it work. But if it inherently doesn't work, then it's just going to leave their mind in this state of of uneasiness.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to picture it and something is stopping them.
What's the it's like the mantis shrimp or something that has like 7 different like versions of vision that we don't like. It can see like ultraviolet light, infrared light, and all these other this. It has a much broader spectrum of vision.
5,000 times as many visible colors as we do, or something ridiculous.
How would you even conceive that? Like
exactly,
it's like trying to conceive the 4th dimension. Like it's
right. So just if you can describe something to someone in terms that their mind can understand, but they can't necessarily picture, I think that can put them on edge and can help get them into this, whoa, things are not natural here.
Yeah.
If this door is a color that does not exist, that's got my interest. That's something unnatural, and I'm going to want to figure out what the crap that is.
Right.
So you do have this infinite special effects budget, but I want to discourage people from using that just for gore.
Sure.
Because in a movie, they might have... In the movie, the remake of The Evil Dead, there's a scene where it is literally raining blood.
Yeah.
And so this entire scene, there is just blood pouring down everywhere. And then there's all sorts of things with their guts ripped out of them and whatever. You can do that. And, I guess by all means do it. But that's not really going to scare people in a game like D&D.
Right. There's already plenty of violence and dismemberment
exactly.
in D&D.
If you got through half of a D&D campaign and nobody has cut off a monster's limb or had blood gush everywhere because they stabbed something, you're probably not playing D&D right.
Sure.
That is a common thing. So gore isn't really, that's not where you should be devoting your effort into describing.
It's not going to be as much of a shock value in D&D. I mean, one, you're describing it and not seeing it. It's gore is something that's going to be more unsettling as a visual thing than just describing.
Right. And it's more because it's just bam, you weren't expecting it. It's right there in front of your face. That's what scares you about it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you were to see it, let's say there was a movie where there's somebody gets dismembered, but then the camera just stays on them for a long time.
Sure.
That's going to be creepy, but not because of the gore. It's more the camera work that's going to be creepy.
Right.
The gore itself is eventually you're going to be okay, let's move on. Let's see something else. I don't care about this anymore.
Yeah, there could be some an unsettling thing about it. That makes me think of bad horror films where they don't have a lot of budget and they have to they basically blow their budget on one dismemberment scene or some sort of gory a gory scene.
Yes.
Where it'll be somebody gets, I want to say there's a scene where somebody gets stabbed in the head or something.
I know exactly what you're talking about because this is the example that I immediately thought of. There is a movie I'm sure I have showed you.
Yep.
It is in my opinion, the worst movie I have ever seen. The worst movie that was not intentionally trying to be bad.
Sure.
I know some movies that were intentionally trying to be bad.
Right, yeah.
This particular movie, I firmly believe, was trying to make a genuinely good film and failed on every account. This movie, I will tell you the title.
Okay.
Is called Carnage: The Legend of Quiltface.
Well, yes, Quiltface.
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to remember. Was it Patchface?
No, it's Quiltface. And so in this movie, it is very, very low budget. And so every time someone is killed, they spent however long setting up this makeup so that it looks like this machete is going into somebody's head. They don't want to have it just be one quick frame. Instead, they hang on this shot for 5 seconds while the actor just sits there trying to remain still, and they play sounds, crappy sounds in the background of bones breaking, and it's no, it's awful.
Yeah.
And so that's where their budget went. So they're well, we got to make use of this budget.
Yeah, it's just an extended scene of somebody going, ah!
Exactly,
as a sword or knife or something is jabbed into them.
Yeah. So yeah. So gore isn't where you should be devoting your time and effort.
Right.
So yeah, we've kind of talked about how to get the game going, how to get your players into, into the atmosphere, how to keep them in the atmosphere. Now I want to talk about what makes something scary. So, we might take a long time on this. We might not take very long on this, but Jeff, what are some examples of horror movies that you've seen that were scary. I know you're not really a huge fan of horror movies, so if you don't have a lot of examples, that's fine.
Right, yeah.
And not necessarily horror movies. It could also be games as well.
Well, I'm trying to think of like things that definitely scared me, and it was more when I was younger, but things do still, scare from time to time. Well, definitely times where I've like ran out of the room when I was younger, although not a horror film. Independence Day with the aliens.
Okay. Aliens are scary.
Yeah, aliens are scary. Like, aliens in general kind of freak me out, even though I'm a big sci-fi fan and like, I trust that there is some form of life in the universe besides on Earth. But anyway,
if I can take a brief moment, I will say, I think that there is guaranteed to be life somewhere. The universe is so big. I think it is so incredibly conceited of us to say that there is not life out there.
Right.
However, the odds of us ever interacting with a being from another planet, there are so many, the odds are so infinitesimally small. Like, we cannot comprehend how low the odds are that we would ever in a million years run into life from another planet.
Right. And I can go on this forever, but like our concept of what life could be very, very narrow.
Absolutely.
So life could be just about anything that we could be a very primitive form of life and that sort of thing.
Sure. But some other discussion for another time.
Yes. Maybe we'll, I don't know, like adding sci-fi into a non-sci-fi tabletop game or something. We can talk about that.
That could be a good topic. If anyone wants to send that in to us.
Yep. So aliens in general, like Independence Day, like the scene in the lab and stuff like that. That freaked me out. The birds.
Okay.
Scarred me.
And that's an Alfred Hitchcock film?
Yes.
I've never actually seen it, but I've heard it's creepy.
I haven't quite seen it either because I ran from the room.
I've seen it through my fingers. I had my hands over my face.
I don't even think I was like actively watching it. I just like walked in on like my parents watching it or something, and it was like it was just the scene of a guy getting his eyes pecked out by birds, and I'm like, nope, and I like just ran out of the room. And then like I think in the same week I was like walking in our backyard. And like I had scared like a bird or something, and I'm guessing it was like a younger bird, or because a larger bird started swooping over my head and like squawking at me, and I just was like, no. So that didn't go well for Jeff, for young little Jeff.
Sure.
Amnesia: The Dark Descent is there's a video game. I've owned that game for a very long time. I've maybe put 40 minutes into it.
Same here, actually.
Cause I've seen some videos where people like basically like turn up the brightness all the way and like turn on like no clipping and stuff like that, where they just kind of go around and see. Cause I was curious, like as to I wanted to see more of the game, but I was too chicken to actually play it. So I'm like, all right, let me just like it. And I've seen like the like full brightness view model of like the monster that like follows you around and stuff like that. It's like, that's pretty creepy, but seeing it like this is not, it's not quite that scary. We'll talk about that in a sec.
Sure.
But yeah, I haven't gotten very far in that game, and I'm interested. It's like I'm interested in games like that.
Yeah, I love horror games, but I have to be in the right mindset to play one.
Yeah.
And I often find myself not able to get into that mindset, either because I'm too busy or part of me doesn't want to. He knows I'm going to get creeped out, and that might make me uncomfortable.
Because it's like, I want the full experience, so I'm going to turn off the lights. I'm going to wear headphones with like slightly louder than I normally would. And I'm going to try and not be around people. And like, it's just like, I remember the first time I played it, I maybe played it for maybe like 5 minutes.
Sure.
And then second time I played it, I got through a good part of it, but like I was cheating because I was around people. Like, but I was in the corner. Like it was Halloween, I think, and they were watching the Silent Hill movie.
Okay.
And so
I've got opinions on that. But anyway, go on.
And it was just like a couple of us, and we were just sort of like hanging about. And like I had brought my laptop over. I'm like, I'm gonna play this scary game while we're doing scary stuff. And I was like, I kept like pausing the game and like getting out of like and like taking my headphones off and like being like, oh, okay, settle down, because there's some freaky stuff in that when you're not ready for it. But
I would say one thing that I'm trying to think from what I do remember of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, like how much this applies to that. But one thing that does make horror is a feeling of powerlessness.
Yeah.
Powerlessness and isolation are two things that I think are very, very powerful in powerlessness is powerful.
Yeah.
In order to get across horror to players.
Yeah. Like in Amnesia, like you have no real abilities. You're solving puzzles.
Yeah.
And like you're basically just trying to stay in lit areas. And, because like the longer you stay in darkness, your character starts to go like crazy and like, has like trouble like focusing on things. Like I've even seen like, again, I don't know all the details of this game because I haven't played it very much, but from what I can tell, like the longer you stay in darkness, like the more stuff you start seeing. Like stuff starts to get weird.
Yeah.
Like your character has like a sanity meter basically.
I love the idea of a sanity meter.
Yeah.
So in a game like this is actually why I think that another reason why I think that D&D isn't really conducive for horror is that D&D is all about empowerment. Yeah. You're constantly growing in power. You face more powerful challenges, but only kind of in the pursuit of becoming more powerful. Mm-hmm. I mean, on a meta level anyway. So, if you are going to run a game like D&D, the way that you can get across a feeling of powerlessness is you want the backdrop for the horror to be something that is so far beyond the scope of what the players can impact that they won't even try. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's say the players one day, they're in town, they go outside, and suddenly the sky tears open and there's a giant rift that demons are coming out of. Uh-huh. That giant rift in the sky is well beyond the player's ability to do anything about. They cannot close that rift. They cannot stop it. It's already open. There's already demons that are swarming the world.
Sure.
The only thing that they can do is deal with the side effects. They can try and stop some of these demons. They can try and save the person on the street who's being attacked by a demon right now. They cannot affect the inciting incident. Like they can't stop the horror. They can only do things to mitigate it.
Right.
If there's a zombie outbreak, they aren't going to cure the entire world. They're going to survive.
Right, yeah.
So that kind of, if that's your mindset going in, is that you want the players to have some sort of horrible thing that's happening that they cannot stop. It's already well beyond stopping.
Yeah.
They just have to find a way to endure it or to make themselves a safe place against it. Mm-hmm. That is much more what horror is about.
Sure.
So something like that, a feeling of powerlessness. Another thing to keep in mind is that, is particularly in your descriptions, is that the unseen is infinitely scarier than the seen. Like you'll hear that anywhere.
Right, yeah.
So if you know that there's a monster, if you're watching a movie and there's this horrifying monster that's chasing everybody, the worst thing that a movie maker can do is to give you a full body shot of that monster.
Right, yeah.
Maybe if they put it in the last 2 minutes of the movie, maybe they can get by that way.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, if you just the monster shows up and then suddenly you see it and it's standing there and it's a monster, you've just lost me. I mean, I'll still pay attention, but you've just made it so that I cannot be scared of that monster anymore.
Right, yeah. When you can see it in full light and everything, it's like with the Amnesia thing where it's seeing that monster, it was it's kind of weird looking and freaky looking, and if I came across that in real life, I'd be scared, but that's not really going to be scaring me too much just by looking. Now that I can see it, it's not going to be freaking me out that much because I know what it is.
Yeah,
in a way.
And this isn't just about monsters either. Again, I'll use a movie example. If you see that a bad guy is about to kill a character, if you see him take that knife, plunge the knife into his chest, and then the guy keels over dead, and then it cuts to the next scene, I guess that was okay. That was a scene, whatever.
Right, yeah.
If instead you see him thrust the knife forward, and then it cuts to a shadow of the character getting stabbed and then falling down, if all you see is a shadow, that is scarier than what you just saw.
Sure.
Now, well, that's not necessarily scary in and of itself, but
Right, yeah.
the less, less is more. Everybody has heard that expression, less is more. And in horror, that is like the mantra that you should be following. Now, this isn't something that necessarily everybody might agree with, but I feel like the unseen is infinitely scarier than the seen. I also think that what is scarier than the unseen is the just barely seen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know that there's a monster following you, and the only time you ever get to see it is in very, very brief glances of like its silhouette, or you see just like a claw rake across a wall as it runs by or something like that. I feel like that is even better than not seeing it at all.
Yeah.
So if you can, whatever is supposed to be scary, if you can give your players like just a little hint of what's going on. And let me give you a comparison example.
Sure.
Let's say you are playing a game and the players walk into a room and there's a maniac that is cutting someone's chest open. He rips out their heart and then eats it.
Uh-huh.
Now, that can be scary. Instead, let's say the players walk into the room. There is a dead body. Its chest has been ripped open and its heart is gone.
Mm.
That's scarier, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know who did this.
Right.
You don't know how they did it.
Right.
You don't know why they did it.
Right.
There's a TV show called Heroes that I used to really, really like before
Heroes.
the writer's strike hit, and then it totally crapped the bed. But the first season kind of is like this a little bit. It starts out as a little bit of a mystery. There's this serial killer who has superpowers. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have superpowers. And then the serial killer is apparently going around and killing people you learn he's killing people with superpowers.
Yeah.
And doing something with their brain. Whenever you encounter the aftermath of one of his victims, it's always you get the characters get there and there's a body. The top of their head has been cut off. Their brain is gone.
Right.
And for several seasons, I don't think they ever really do this, but they never explain what he did with those brains. There is a point in an early episode where another character is accused of being that serial killer and the police are questioning him. And they're like, what did you do with the brain? What, did you eat it? Did you flush it down the toilet? Did you throw it in the garbage? What did you do to it? And he doesn't have an answer because he's not the serial killer. But that always gets me thinking, what does he do with the brains?
Right, yeah.
The show never tells us what he does with the brains. They sort of give an indication in a later season that is kind of unsatisfying. But
sure, yeah.
If the players don't know what this person did with that heart,
mm-hmm.
then their mind is going to be going crazy. Like, what's he doing with these hearts? Why is he doing it with these hearts? What is going on here? So that is so much scarier than seeing a serial killer cut open the chest, rip out the heart, and eat it.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, that's what he's doing with the hearts.
He's eating it. He's hungry.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So, seeing less
He just wanted a snack. Oh,
I suppose so.
I could sympathize with that.
Right. So yeah, like seeing less is better in general for engendering a scared feeling.
Yeah.
So when when your players encounter something scary, try to give them only enough of a description to let their minds, fill in the rest of the details.
Yeah.
And don't give them time to study whatever it is. If the players are able to watch the monster without running away from it, they're going to be able to learn more about it, and learning more about it is going to make it less scary. Like something that you know all about is a lot less scary than something you know nothing about.
Yeah.
It's all about like less is more,
mm-hmm.
seeing less of it. So the less the players are able to study it, the more gradually they're able to learn about it. I think it's best if there's a supernatural monster, the players are never fully able to learn everything about.
Right. Yeah.
If they only know it eats people's hearts and we get rid of it by sprinkling with holy water. If those are the only two things they know about that monster is going to be terrifying.
Yeah.
And if they know, oh, okay, it's a demon from the plane of the nine hells. Its name is blobbity bloop. It, it gains power from these hearts, and then it uses the power to then channel it into its home plane because it's trying to bring its home plane to the material plane. All that is making the monster less scary.
Mm.
It is no longer this creepy monster that does this horrible thing and we can only get rid of it one way. Now it's, oh, okay, it's a monster with motivations and with goals and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And okay, now we kind of understand it.
And a family and a backstory.
Exactly. The more you know about it, the less scarier it is.
Favorite bedtime snack.
Well, it's favorite bedtime snack is hearts. Let's be honest here.
And the souls of the innocent.
Right. Now, as for what sort of things in your descriptions might be scary, there's something that I want to talk about that is called the uncanny valley. Would you like to describe what the uncanny valley is, or do you want me to?
I could give it a shot. I only really know it through video games in that it's basically as like the graphics of video games has gotten better and better, like character models, like people in video games have gotten more and more realistic looking.
Yeah.
But so basically as we get closer and closer to graphics that have more realistic people in them, there's a point at which it's not quite perfectly realistic, but it's close, but there's something off about it.
Yes.
So like your belief in that this is a person is a real thing, it goes up and up and up, and as you get close to it being almost exactly like a person, your belief kind of goes down a bit because it's close, but something's off.
Yes.
So like you kind of lose your belief in like, oh, this is. So it's noticing the CGI in a movie where it's like, where like they're trying really hard to make it look realistic, but there's like that, there's the dinosaur just is a little bit too glossy or something like that, So it's like something's off about it. That's the uncanny valley, is that like just that dip in disbelief.
Yes.
So that dip in belief of that being a real thing.
Right. So if you were to like chart a graph where one axis was how realistic something looks, and then the other axis is how good it, like how pleasing it is to look at.
Yeah.
The graph will go up and up and up. The more realistic it looks, it's going to look more and more pleasing until it gets very close to realistic, but not realistic enough where that graph drops down into this valley. And then, in theory, eventually the closer you get to photorealism, it then comes back up.
Sure.
So that it is both realistic and good to look at. But yeah, so anything that it looks almost real, but there is something about it. Maybe you can't even put your finger on exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Something about it just looks wrong.
Yeah. And I know in video games, most of the time, at least with like human character models, it's usually like facial features. It's usually, but it's more specifically, I want to say it's more like, I see it a lot more in like
movement of the mouth.
The mouth movements are usually a thing. There's like, it's always like too like toothy or gummy or something.
Yes,
like
it is.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah. Let me give an example of how this can play into horror. There are a lot of horror movies that use a very, very simple technique to portray that something is unnatural.
Uh-huh.
If you were to have footage of a person walking backwards, so you just got a camera, you filmed someone walking backwards, putting their right foot behind them, then their left foot behind them, and so on, and then played that footage in reverse, it would not look like they were walking forward. It would look like they were walking forward, but something is wrong.
Yeah.
That is not natural movement forward, even though that is a person walking and they are moving forward in the process.
Right.
Something about it just looks wrong. So like any kind of movement that is unnatural looking in your descriptions will make it scary. Like, let me give you an example. A long time ago, this is a real world example. There's a long time ago, I was in Tennessee. My wife and I were going on this hike. We were on this trail up in some national park or whatever. And it was getting a little late in the day. We needed to start heading back soon, but it was like maybe in the fall. It was maybe around like 6 p.m. or something. Like it was starting to get a little bit dark. We could still see where we were going, but if you tried to like focus on something on the ground or whatever, like you had to really focus on it for a moment.
Yeah.
We're walking along this path. Like I said, it's getting kind of dark. My wife, Lisa, her phone rings. She answers the phone. She's talking to her mom, whatever. While she's talking to her mom, I'm looking around. I glance down at the ground and I see there's a toad. A toad is maybe like 2 inches across. It was just off the path. It was in the dirt. Uh-huh. And, toads were not an uncommon sight down in that area.
Yeah.
And so, I saw, oh, okay, cool. It's a toad. I like toads. I think they're cool. So I sort of like crouch down. I'm looking at it. And I don't remember if I reached out to touch it or what, but like something spooked it and it moved. And I realized this was not a toad.
Uh-huh.
This was a giant spider.
Ugh.
Its body is what I thought was a toad. But rather than it hopping away, I saw it like shuffle back and forth. And it was dark enough that I thought it was a toad. But once it moved, I saw something about this is not at all a toad.
Yeah.
Imagine if you saw a toad and you could see it just well enough to recognize it was a toad, but it didn't hop, it shuffled away.
Yeesh.
That would be terrifying, as it was.
Right.
I didn't want to tell my wife because she's even more scared of spiders than I am.
So you just kind of had to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, she was still on the phone, so I was like, let's go. I'm like making the gesture like, hey, let's go this way. Come with me. So she followed me. We got to the car. As we were driving away, I told her what happened.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that was terrifying.
Yeah,
so
there's plenty of times like, my eyes play tricks on me and stuff like that. Like you see something off in the distance and it's like dark and you can't quite make out what it is. And your mind fills in the blanks, and like there have been times when I could have sworn that there was like a face staring at me or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. There's a phenomenon called, I think it's pronounced pareidolia,
sure,
or something like that. It's when you see something that looks like a face.
Yeah. It's just like your mind is designed to look for faces so that you'd be like, oh, there's a person there.
There's my mother. Like when you're a baby, there's my mother. So you learn to recognize faces.
It's like, I need to interact with this to be a human. But then but you're staring off into like the woods or something or I swear like the hall light in my like outside my bedroom like plays tricks on me sometimes. like the crack in the door, like I swear I saw something pass by it or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
In again one of the Evil Dead movies, maybe even a couple of the Evil Dead movies, there's a point where they all take place in this cabin, or at least most of them take place in this cabin. And there's a point where the characters, they get to this cabin, they look at it, and very, very subtly superimposed over the picture of the cabin is a face that lines up with like the windows look like the eyes, and then like the front porch, the floorboards kind of look like teeth. And like that very, very subtle thing that makes it look off.
Yeah.
That's what's scary.
I gotta tell you, while we're talking about this, it's really dark out right now, and I'm seeing a glare in Gabe's window that's right behind Gabe, and I think I noticed this earlier too. Like there's just like a reflection of like his bookshelf or something that like just barely looks like a face, and it has kind of caught me a couple times, honestly.
Jeff, that's my friend Gerald. He's watching you.
Gerald, no. Go away.
So, so the uncanny valley is a very, very big part of what makes something scary. So like I mentioned, the frog that the toad that shuffled away.
Yeah.
And then another thing is whenever you see like if there's someone whose limbs move backwards, maybe their legs, instead of their knee coming forward, their knee goes backwards.
Okay.
That sort of thing, even just a simple description of that can make the description a little bit scarier. Another thing very similarly is when something doesn't sound the way that it looks like it should sound. Imagine if you are walking down a dark street and you see that there's like a person standing on the side of the street, and maybe you're lost. So like you ask them what street you're on, or like how to get to First and Main. And then they look at you, they open their mouth, and out comes a baby's voice. That's kind of creepy.
Right. That's pretty unsettling.
Yes. And like, that's something I've known people in real life that like they're grown adults, but they sound like children, and it's creepy at first. You get used to it, but like it just kind of puts you on edge a little bit when you meet them. And that's like a real life thing that should not be scary, but because it is not what you expect when looking at them, it's like almost what you'd expect, but not right.
Something's off.
Something's off about that. Now, a lot of people talk about the like Lovecraftian horror and the Cthulhu mythos and all that as being scary.
Sure.
Maybe it's just that I never learned anything about Lovecraft before, like, really the media age where it's it's everywhere where you see like references to Cthulhu everywhere.
Yeah.
Lovecraft is not scary to me.
Sure.
Cthulhu is not scary to me. And I feel like I have tried to go back and read some of Lovecraft's stuff, and it's all in this like very old prose, and it's really hard for me. It's really hard to really get into it. So even if there was something scary in what it's trying to tell me, I feel like it wouldn't scare me.
Sure.
I cannot see myself being scared by the idea of Cthulhu.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the idea of what Cthulhu is, maybe, but seeing a picture of Cthulhu isn't going to scare me.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And I think that just has mostly to do with just the fact that it was a scary thing to a lot of people. And so it made its way into a lot of popular media. And as such, it's been, the well has been poisoned. Like there's just been way too much saturation of it for it to still be scary.
Right.
I heard someone say once that if your players are attacking Cthulhu, you have already failed at representing Cthulhu.
Sure.
Because he isn't supposed to be this corporeal thing that people can fight against. The idea behind Cthulhu is that it is this literally unspeakable abomination that is so beyond our comprehension we can't even really picture it correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what a lot of Lovecraft is, to my understanding, is that the whole point is that it was all about stuff that was so alien to us and our way of thinking that if we thought about it too much, it would drive us crazy.
Right.
So like, I think that's a creepy idea. I understand why that should be scary, but as Lovecraft has been presented in popular media, it isn't. So if you are running a game and you're like, and then he said the name Cthulhu, that's not going to scare me. I'm going to be like, oh, okay. So I guess Cthulhu's involved.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Tell me all about Cthulhu. That's not, I'm sure that's not the attitude that, should be elicited by that. But that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, again, there's the NPC cast in their episode, they made a very good point about this exact point. And it's that anything with a plushie is not scary.
Yeah. Anything that has a representation in like a plushie or like those little Funko Pop figures.
Exactly. And we talked about aliens earlier, and I said that aliens are scary.
Yeah.
And I guess let me correct that. It's aliens. The idea of aliens is scary.
Right.
The grays, like the gray aliens with the big bulbous eyes, those are not scary to me. And that's because they have been represented in media so much that they have lost any ability to still be scary to me.
Sure.
So yeah, anything that has been really, really big in media isn't going to be as scary. So what you can do is you can take the concepts, like the Lovecraftian thing of, unspeakable horrors that drive you insane. You can take those and you can just apply it to something else. You can call it something. Don't call it Cthulhu. Don't make it look like a giant monster with tentacles under its face. Make it look like anything else, and you can still use the same concepts to try and be scary. And speaking of insanity, one more thing. I mean, we're kind of getting a little long here, but one more thing that I want to talk about is that insanity isn't really scary. Like the idea of a person that is insane, it's a little scary. But what is scarier is a person that is going insane.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's media, if there's a movie or a TV show or a game where you're encountering a character that is just off the wall crazy, spouting all sorts of nonsense, I guess that can be creepy depending on the situation.
Right. It's a little unsettling.
But if you meet a person that is completely sane, but then halfway through talking to you, they start repeating sentences over and over and over again until something snaps them out of it, that's creepy.
Right. Yeah. That's really unsettling.
Yes. I mean, like that could be a symptom of them going insane. Mm-hmm. Like if they were crazy to begin with, then, they might be doing that. But it's not the fact that they're doing it that's scary. It's the juxtaposition of they're doing it now. They were not doing it a moment ago.
Right. Yeah.
So like that's what's scary.
That reminds me of I remember like hearing like a recording of some woman who had gone through some like head trauma or something like that, and like she was like talking to her daughter, and then like she would like basically like she'd restart the conversation over and over.
Okay.
It'd be like, you know, she's like, where am I? And like, oh, you're in the hospital. It's like, what, you know, what time is it? And like, you know, she'd be asking all these questions. It's like, what happened to me? Like, you know, because you're in a hospital, you're trying to figure out what's going on. And then it go back to, what time is it? And then like the conversation would start over again.
Yeah.
And it was partly the presentation of the sound clip, because it was like a radio show or something I was listening it to. But like, it was like very like, oh man, like this, it was kind of scary and creepy. Not like, you know, it's like, look, this is something that can happen.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Okay. So like, like seeing somebody go through becoming insane. It's like, oh, so this is a thing that can happen to my character. Like, like this could happen to me. Like if it just happened to him before my eyes, like what's going to stop it from happening to me?
Yeah. So like if you're playing the game and the DM slips you a note that your character sees or hears something the other characters don't, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Especially if like it keeps happening and it's not like, oh, there's an invisible guy there talking to you. No, like if there is no explanation for it, if you begin to think that your character is going crazy, or if the rest of the party thinks that your character is going crazy, or if you think the rest of the party is going crazy, any of those can be interesting. But if there is a person at the table that like, oh, they just randomly spout words, that is less interesting, because that is like an established thing, and it's not, you're not seeing the descent, you're just seeing the already existing effects.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie The Ring?
No, not really.
I really liked The Ring. When it first came out, I saw it in the theaters, and it really, really scared me. Like it was around the time that I was starting to get into horror movies. And for a long, long time, I would say that like that was like the last movie that scared me for years. For like, I want to say something like 15 years. That was the last movie that I could remember really scaring me.
Yeah.
And it even scared me so much that like I was talking about it with friends at school a few days later, and like that was creeping me out, was like just talking about it a few days later. And I'm trying to think about like what exactly was it about that movie that scared me. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It has to do with what we mentioned earlier about like there's this phenomenon the players cannot influence. They can only try and mitigate the effects of it.
Right.
In The Ring, for anybody who has not seen The Ring is a movie, came out in like early 2000s, 2004 or something, where this woman finds out about this, basically a cursed VHS tape, which nowadays sounds like a ridiculous concept. At the time, it was a little ridiculous because DVDs were out then.
Right.
This woman finds about this cursed videotape that if you watch it, it's the video itself. They show you the video in the movie. It's basically a whole bunch of really bizarre and unsettling images. Like there's a picture of some maggots. There's a picture of a person's thumb with like a metal nail getting thrust through it. There's a picture of like a bunch of fingers by themselves twitching in a box. There's a shot of a chair, and then the same chair upside down spinning. A shot of a ladder leaning up against a wall and then falling over. A shot of a woman brushing her hair in front of this mirror. And then there's like a couple cuts where for a moment the mirror is directly in front of the camera. So in theory, you should be seeing the camera, but you're not. So a whole bunch of just weird images that just feel unnatural and sort of set you on edge. Like the video itself, when I saw the movie, the video itself creeped me out.
Right.
Not to mention the rest of the movie. So you watch this video. Immediately after watching the video, you get a phone call. If you answer the phone, it is a little girl's voice telling you 7 days. And then 7 days later, to the minute, you die. Now, the movie does a very good job of making this scary, because the movie starts off with a couple girls that one of them had seen the video. They joke about being scared by it, but then they play it off. And then a few minutes later, the girl who hadn't seen the video, she finds her friend dead, but they don't show you what her friend looked like dead until well into the movie. They show like a half a second shot of this waterlogged corpse with her mouth open in a scream of horror.
Sure.
So when they do show that to you, it's like, what in the world could have possibly caused this?
Right.
It was like she drowned while screaming, but she was in her own house when it happened. That goes with the whole idea of showing you the effects, but you don't know what could have possibly caused it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the main character of the movie is like the girl's aunt or something like that. She's like a journalist. She starts trying to find out what's going on. She finds the tape and watches it. She sees this bizarre thing. She gets the call, say, in 7 days. She then finds out, spoilers for the movie The Ring. I'm sorry, but it's this movie's so old. She then finds out through some stuff that like it has to do with, there was this girl that had like weird, bizarre supernatural powers that was like shunned by the rest of her town. She might have been adopted. She might not have. And eventually, because she was like causing all of these horses in the town to go crazy, her mother strangled her, threw her in a well, and left her there, where she died 7 days later.
Mm.
And then later on, a bed and breakfast was built on top of that well, and someone recorded a video on a VHS tape directly above the well, so she was able to put her, her evil magic or whatever, the spirit was able to put herself into this VHS tape, and then cursed whoever watched it. And so there's some bizarre stuff. There's some stuff in that synopsis that shouldn't be scary. It's like, no. A ghost inhabiting a VHS tape, that's funny. That's not scary.
Sure.
But the way that the movie sets up the stakes and then it shows you the effects of things before you know how it happened, it never really shows you what happens when this ghost kills somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying. And not only that, but it adds in an element of time. The main character has to figure out how to stop this within 7 days or she's going to die. And then also her son watches it. And so she has to try and solve it. She's not only trying to solve it for herself, she's trying to solve it for her son. So the stakes just keep getting higher and higher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this like perfect storm of goofy things that the narrative 100% commits to.
Mm.
They give you something that the characters cannot directly affect. They can only try to mitigate the effects of it. It shows you the effects of things without showing you how it happened, so that your mind has to fill in the details. It does all of this work to really create a scary environment. And then they came out with a sequel, and the sequel was garbage. And then just a couple of years ago, they made a remake, and the remake missed everything that made the original good. And by the way, The Ring is a remake of a Japanese film.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen the Japanese film. I actually think the American version is better. There's little things that each one does better, but like,
sure, the
American version I liked better. So just to kind of round this out here, like, what are some monsters in popular media or in D&D, or just that you can come up with that you think should be scary but aren't? It's kind of a weird question.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Zombies.
Okay.
I think that the idea of zombies is scary. It is a mockery of life. It is somebody that should not be moving around, but they are.
Right.
It's someone that is probably moving unnaturally.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that is unstoppable. Like, you can kill a zombie, I guess, but like, if a zombie's chasing you and you run away and then you turn back around, it's still going to be chasing you.
Right. Yeah.
I've heard it said that if you were trapped in a room with a zombie, you can run to the other side of the room and it's going to slowly follow you, but like, you can never stop. You can never go to sleep. You are going to have to keep going to the other side of the room and then to the other side of the room.
Right.
The idea of a zombie should be scary because like the things that make up a zombie are scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not scared by zombies. In a game like D&D, zombies don't scare me.
Right, yeah, zombies are like, oh, they're undead type, I get a bonus against them.
Exactly, yeah. Or like, oh, that means they move really slow, and if you're playing 3rd edition, they can only take one action.
Sure.
Like, that's not what should be coming across from that.
All right, yeah.
And I attribute that to just the media. They are everywhere in the media. There's Walking Dead. There's been so many zombie movies over the years.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many video games where you're killing zombies.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that zombies should be scary, but they're just not.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot. I think we've pretty much gone pretty well into what makes something scary.
Yeah.
But it's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. You got to commit. You got to get everybody in the right mindset, and you got to provide imagery for the players that will scare them because they are almost natural but not natural. So yeah, a lot of stuff there. I hope everybody is able to have a great Halloween this year. Halloween is a great holiday. If you don't have a great Halloween this year, or you listen to this after Halloween, hey, you got a whole year to prepare for the next one.
Right, yep.
So I think that will do it for today. You know, we just covered that one topic. But hey, it's Halloween. Have some fun.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So if anybody would like to submit spooky questions for us to discuss, items for the Dracolich's Horde, or stories for the undead funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, and important links, go to interpartyconflict.com. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or our subreddit at reddit.com/interpartyconflict, where I post weekly discussion questions for you. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, leave us a spooky review, subscribe, or just tell a friend from beyond the grave. I really committed to this at the beginning, and then I kind of stopped, and now I'm getting back into it. Or if you would like to leave us a scary donation, we have an evil PayPal donate button on our website. Anything you could give us would go towards making the show scarier.
Yes, the PayPal button is very evil and can only be stopped by clicking it and donating.
Yes. Jeff, would you like to tell us about FriendQuest?
FriendQuest is our it's our video game channel on YouTube. You should go and watch some of our playthroughs of the Dungeons and Dragons arcade games.
Yep, and then a little bit of Gauntlet Slayer Edition or whatever.
Any suggestions for other games to play, please send me an email at thefriendquest@gmail.com.
There you go. And then also head over to audibletrial.com/conflict and get yourself a free audiobook. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from. I guarantee you can find something you like 100% for free.
Yeah, possibly something spooky.
There you go. And then I just want to remind everybody that if you go to bit.ly/interpartyconflict, all lowercase, you can take a survey that we've set up about our podcast, about, you know, what you like about the podcast, what you don't like. And if you take that survey, it takes about 5 minutes, you get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Tom and Mary Russell over at hollandspiel.com.
Cool.
So go check out that survey, get yourself a couple free board games, and let us know what you think of the podcast.
Yeah.
And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hackers RPG.
Wait, Gabe, we forgot to do the funeral pyre.
You know why, Jeff?
Why?
It's because the funeral is yours.
Ah! Bye, everybody. Ah!
No! No! No!